So, welcome. We're here for virtual pinball workshop number 4. We are looking at addressable RGB lighting today. We are Game Club Central. I am Marty, and this is Porgy. We will be looking at the hardware connections and software, how it interacts with a table. So, without further ado, Porgy, I see your workbench in front of us.
Yep, yep. I got a couple toys for us to play with. Most of your, common, and I guess the speaker LEDs are becoming more common, right?
Mm-hmm.
People want to do that. So common hookups. We got a speaker LED setup. We have a matrix, which was by popular request, and we have the addressables that go across the side down the side of your cabinet, which can basically be, I mean, at least for the 144s and the ones in the speaker grill, we're using the same stuff for the most part. Just spacing is different, right? So this stuff, this spool, this is a 16-foot spool. I can use this for back box lighting, addressables. I can use it for the back box addressables. I can use this for undercab addressables if you want to do undercab lighting with addressables, which I personally do. I know some people do just RGB. It's preference for those people, but I prefer obviously doing addressables all the way around because it makes things sparkle and look pretty.
Well, an RGB is just one color or the other. Addressable lets you mix and match
So
and
yeah,
get
yeah. I mean,
different hues.
yeah. So there's so many things we could do, right? We could do like I said, undercab lighting, back box lighting. We could do put a topper on the top of your back box and with acrylic and light that up with addressables. You could do your what's it called? Your cabinet protectors for your leg protectors. You could put LED addressable LEDs behind there. Your matrix, your
Well, let's not
speakers,
go
right?
crazy. I don't want to run out of power.
Uh, so I think that's important that you said that. Something to understand about these addressables, each one uses zero point zero 0.06 amps per LED. So you do the math, a thousand, a thousand LEDs, that's 60 watts. Okay. So you need to plan appropriately when you're talking about, adding LEDs, and how you're going to do it throughout your cabinet. You need to make sure you have the right amount of power. I know some people that go absolutely nuts, they actually have two power sources, right? They have their 60 amp and maybe even another 30 amp, depending on what their different type of lighting they're doing in the system. So, it's definitely something to think about when you're going into this. But there's a really good Manuel 60 amp power supply that I think almost everyone uses. That pretty much works because, you know, it's very rare that you're gonna have all 1,000 on at the same time, and 1,000 is kind of really that marker if you're doing. So, the fact that, if you're using wider spaced LEDs, something where there's not not like the 144s, but maybe like 60 millimeter LEDs. um you can get more out of if you're putting a lot more LEDs in different places and not using as so much power. So it just depends on how you want to lay out your stuff, but I just find that important that knowing for every LED you install, zero point zero 0.06 amps, you guys do the math, it adds up.
Yeah.
And you just plan appropriately for you. All right, so we have two different type of uh, solutions. I mean, there's a third one that we can talk about briefly, which is the one from Mike, his PAL board, but those are no longer available. So what I have in front of us is basically two different types of teensies, and then there's also Wemos. I don't have a Wemos from Arnos. It's another solution. We could probably cover it at a different time, but we're just covering the teensies tonight. So I have a teensy 4.0 on the Teencab, which is from Arnos, his board. That's his boards, and then I have a teensy 3.1 on a breakout board. And the difference is this breakout board you can plug in a Ethernet cable, strip the other end, and use eight outputs, four on each one, because you're gonna need data and ground to each one.
So you're replacing Arnoz's Teencab with the breakout board,
Yeah,
basically?
this would be a whole different solution if you're not going down the route of Arnos. I like Arnos's solution because, and I'll give you the subtle differences. Uh, there's good and bad for both, right? So the solution with the one from Amazon, which this breakout board and the Teensy, you
Right.
don't need to have another power for the Teencab. Like the Teencab uses its own power source, its own ground. But you know, every single output, every single data output has to have a ground leading back to this.
Ah,
So
okay.
each individual, um, basically each individual LED channel that you're running has a ground and data coming back to this board, as well as a data and ground going back to
Right.
um, I'm sorry, a power and ground going back to your power and ground source. Where the Teencab, you have 5-volt provided to the board, which is the difference there, and ground provided to the board,
Right.
which
In
means
one place for the whole
in one
board.
place. So correct. So when you run your individual channels for your LEDs, you only need to plug in your power and your ground directly to your power source and your ground source, and then you're plugging in only a single line of data into the Teencab, which is really nice.
Okay.
So it lets you kind of break up your outputs, which is, I don't know if you notice, on a lot of these boards or on a lot of these cables, if you notice, it has multiple leads coming off of them. There's
Right.
a power source coming off of them, and then a whole another 3 set of leads, which is power, ground, and data. And you could just pull the data off that line as long as you're finding ground and power from another source,
Right.
which makes it just, in my opinion, is cleaner.
But you have
I
options
tend to,
too.
yeah, and I tend to repeat my power a lot. So they say, I think, and I'm probably gonna get this number wrong, but I think it's 100 every 150 LEDs you should re-inject power, so you
Right.
don't have any
That's
like
it. That's right.
dimming. So I re-inject power on everything. So this matrix is the only place. The matrix has, more than 150 LEDs. So when I have the smaller 8 by 8 LED matrices, I inject power on those to tie in all the sources to make sure that the LED matrix
So you're injecting
is,
panel to
yeah,
power to each
yeah.
panel.
Yep, just then that whole panel is getting lit properly. And then every single lead I do, like if I do, the left channel on the left side of your playfield and right, I do those individually. Those all have their own power source, their own individual data. You can daisy chain them. I prefer not to. I like doing home runs for everything. So, there is that
Okay.
option. But as you daisy chain, remember you have to re-inject power in different places to make sure you're not losing power.
Right.
Okay.
I'll
So
be off
we're
camera,
gonna
but here I'm gonna grab a stool.
okay. So here we're gonna really focus on the Teencab because it's already kind of wired up here, and we can kind of go through it. The Teencab, uh, you can see, and I'm gonna just so you know, I'm gonna turn my camera off just because I think that's what's lagging. But we can look at the workshop here. One second. Let's see if that helps with resources.
I honestly think
And
that's fine anyways. It'll look better on YouTube.
yep. Okay. So there's. Let me know if we have any more lag. It looks like my CPU is down to 60%. So the Teencab, as you see, we have 8 inputs here, and we have our power and ground, like I discussed. Okay. So if we look at the Teencab, like I said, right now I got power and ground running into it from the terminal block. Okay, that's going to power up the Teencab. That's just for power for the Teencab. Then I have my 8 inputs. That's where I can start tying in the data for each one of my strips and anything that we need to run data to give it, what it's supposed to be doing when it lights up. If you notice here, I got a couple other connections, and it's kind of hard to see, but I got a lot of power. I got power for each connection. I have ground for each connection running directly to their feed. So if you look at the 144 playfield, I got power and ground going in directly,
Right.
and then there's a data feed that's broken out that I'll cut into the Teencab. And then same thing here. I have my ground running into the Teencab, my power and ground running directly into the the terminal block, and I can plug this guy in. So let's just go ahead and plug these guys in.
Okay.
Now I created Molex connectors for these, and I do that with all my builds. I Molex everything, so I just did a quick Molex there. This one already had a Molex on it, so I don't have to worry about that. And then I'm going to tie these in. So right now I have 2 data leads in. I got output 1 and output 2. Okay.
Okay.
So as of right now, I have the speaker, and we'll kind of hook up the matrix as we go. I have the speakers hooked up, and I have the
Side
addressable
strips.
across the left side strips hooked up. Okay, so just to give you a quick representation, because I do have the TNC configured, and we'll go over that next. I'm going to provide basically the USB connection first, and then I'll provide power to the Teencab. It is suggested like that from Arnos's website, so that's how I do it.
You're bringing that through that terminal block, and then from the terminal block to the Teencab, right?
Yep. Terminal block. You see has a couple alligator clips here.
Yep. Just wanting people to know what you're doing.
Yep. And I do want to say this because people get confused. Your addressable LEDs has nothing to do with direct feedback in the sense that you don't have to. It doesn't have to do with the rig master. It doesn't have to be hooked up to an output on the rig master or a MOS light or a pinscape. This is its own separate source. So when you're pulling feedback on direct DUF and you're configuring DUF, it actually has its own setup for the TNC for the WS2812B configurations. That's completely set. So you can have this single unit with addressables and not have any toys or any like driver boards, and this would work in your cabinet today.
Yeah,
And that's what
this
we're simulating
is
here.
this is completely separate, yet complements the other solutions we've already looked at for feedback.
It's separate, but it could play well into having
Right.
good feedback.
It goes in your virtual pinball, but it doesn't play with
Yep.
the rig master.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't even need a rig master. This
Right.
can be something you can add to your cabinet tomorrow, very cheaply. By the way, these panels are relatively cheap. This is, really less than $100 in hardware here, and you can have addressable LEDs for the most part.
Yep. You're cutting out again.
I have ground and power going to the. Yeah, I don't know what's doing it.
That's fine.
No, I clear up. So I have my ground and power here, and maybe it's my wireless. I'm on wireless right now. Then I have my data feeds. All right, and I have data feeds here. So right now I can run a test, and as you can see, my addressables turn on, they light up. That's just in the test, and that's kind of the first step I check before I even start configuring anything, just to make sure that everything's working. Now, again, my TNC is already configured, so having that test, I usually set up the firmware before I even put this in the cabinet so that I could do this test when I'm, when I hook up a connection, I turn on the TNC, if I pull the laptop next to it and just make sure everything works. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty simple layout. Like I said, I think people get confused. Obviously, the hardest part about this setup is, it's not really the connections here because it's just data, ground, and power. Is the configuration side. So, what do you want to do next?
I'm gonna wait for you to come back.
Get it hooked
There,
up.
you're back now. Did you want to hook up the matrix before we switch scenes, or do you want to just?
Yeah, we could do that. So let's hook up the matrix.
Let's do anything in this scene before we switch over.
All right, so I have those hooked up. Now let's hook up the data for the 1, 2, and 3. There we go. Turn this guy. Make sure I have data here. Getting all my connections here. And we'll have to program that so people can kind of see how that goes. All right, so the third one's hooked up. Let's see. All right. Let's get this guy up. Matrix. There you go. Okay, so there's your matrix. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the programming side of things. So Arnos makes a nice little tool. You still hear me? Still broadcasting?
Yep, you're all good.
Okay. All right, so Arnos makes a nice little tool called the Arnos Tiny Tools. This works really nicely because you can basically select the firmware that he gives you with his tools, and it's already kind of pre-generated here with the card type. So we're gonna select the Teensy. We're going to select the Teensy one we're using, which is the Teensy 4.0 right now. And then we're going to search for the firmware. He actually provides firmware already pre-configured. So Teensy 4.0. I'm going to hit update firmware. I'm going to go ahead and hit the program button on the Teensy. It's going to program it. It's updating it. There you go. And now that guy is programmed. So now I should see a COM that's shown here. Yep, so we see now we have a COM3 device, which is the Teensy. And also in his tool, we can go into the cabinet generator and actually create a new
If you want
cabinet
that
file
full
here.
screen, it would look better.
Okay, so if you see here, he has a cabinet file. We can actually generate a new cabinet file. We can load our cabinet file, which has already been generated. Let's see. It's up. It ain't liking it. So anyways, we can create the cabinet file here. There is documentation for creating the cabinet file. I'm not going to go through that in this video, but you know, that's something we can leave a link to, right?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and go to the cabinet file I already created, and I'll just kind of show you that. So if you look at my cabinet file that's already been generated, I have a couple things added here. So as you see, first input is speakers. Second is side running board. We're going to go ahead and add the back box addressable LEDs. Let's go and add those. Call it back box, I believe, backboard. We'll add these live here.
Okay.
And notice how the first one, it says starts at 1. Width is 1, height is 22, starts at LED 1. Second one, the sideboard starts width is 1, height is 144, but it starts at 22 because we're already using the first 21 for
Right. So you sequentially
features.
go up.
Yep. So now that we have 144 plus 21, we're gonna add that in. That's 165 is when we'll start there. I think it's 165 or 166.
Well, we'll know if you're wrong.
284, 166. And we got to do, I think it's bottom up, left to right.
Bottom,
Right.
yeah, bottom up, left to right.
Yep. So save, and there's our cabinet file.
I don't know why, but it just went pixely again.
I have no idea, man.
Yeah. I can edit it out of YouTube, and I know our audience will put up with it, but we need it to settle before we go back. Do you want me to go back to share your workshop as well as this screen? That might fix it.
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead and switch back. We'll
unhide the workshop. Okay, that fixed it. It's something with Obs Ninja when you hit save or something.
Yeah, Obs is messing up.
Okay, we'll leave it like this.
Okay, so all right, so right now we have a setup here. I'm just gonna go ahead and load a table just to kind of show you guys how a simple cabinet file configured, making sure that you have your outputs set up for your direct output configs on Duff config tool on the website where you generate that config. You got to make sure those are lined up in your cabinet file. Again, we can kind of, there's enough information about how to configure a cabinet file. I don't think I need to cover.
Yeah, but that tool's on VPN Universe, right? VP Universe.
Yep, and then you're going. Yep, you have to go on there. You have to configure which ports are going to be for what.
Yeah, there's plenty of videos on that.
And from there, we're just going to go ahead and do a quick table test. And again, these are just I don't know.
Which table you load?
I do have a total nuclear and annihilation here. We'll try to that one up real quick because that's got pretty lights on it.
Cool. This is exciting stuff. Definitely. Look at that purple.
Yep. And let's see if the matrix working yet.
And is that the left strip you have wired?
Yep.
So I wouldn't have seen the ball launch there, but
Let's go ahead and let the ball drain here.
nice. That's cool. This one has code where it follows the ball around with the LED strip. That's cool.
Yep. So, just a simple test here. So, last thing to really touch on is, how simple these are. There's only a ground, there's 5 volt, and there's data. So as long as you're feeding your data into your data ports, you got everything grounded properly, and you're getting good power. As long as you're repeating your power on these addressables, and you have your cabinet file set up to reflect, which each port is designed for what toy. You can add as many lights as you want.
Yep.
I tend to use undercab lighting for things like my speaker grill because I don't want to do a lot of other stuff with it. I just want to kind of, add a simple glow on tables with my speaker grills. People add like flash MX and other things to kind of make them get a little more crazy. I don't do any of that stuff. Um,
And you mentioned undercab. You use addressable? No, you use RGB
I
undercab,
do.
right?
No, I use addressable
Do
everything
you?
personally. Yes, I do.
Okay.
I like it like that because as you saw how it was sparkling on Total Annihilation,
Yeah,
the purples, that will happen on that's undercab lighting too. That'll happen on the undercab too.
and I get it, but if you want to save costs and you want some addressables, you could put RGB undercab if you wanted.
Well,
Back
remember, if you
box.
use RGB, if you do RGB, you need to then have some type of MOS light
Right, more
or
connectors.
the rig master to have those individual outputs set up on that. You
Right.
can't do that out of the teen seat.
Yep,
Teen
good
seats are
point.
just addressable LEDs.
Forgot we were just talking about addressables for a minute.
Yep. Yeah. So me personally, I do addressable everything, and I like it that way just because I don't have to then have all those extra outputs on, um, you know, like another MOS light. If you just think about some of the builds I've done, think about me adding RGB under cab and other stuff. That's another, per strip. That's another, 3 inputs or 3 outputs per side, or however else it's configured.
And
So,
are you
but
able to get a matrix, two side strips, two undercabs on one teen cab?
you are, and if you also know Arnos, it creates the PCB boards now for your flippers and Magma Save
Right.
that also use either MX or RGB. So you can go that as well. You can kind of tile that in. There's only 8 inputs on this thing though, so you have to figure out how you want to, use those 8 inputs to get all your sources to come out through ARGB, which means either doing some some in series, and other ones where you're doing home runs. Like the Matrix, I always say do a home run for the Matrix, do a home run for your left and right play
So
field.
one input to the teen cab for the matrix.
Yep, yep.
Another one
One
for
input.
both side strips tied together.
Uh, Personally, I do one for each
Okay.
because
That's
I have a
three.
hard time. Yeah, I have a hard time seeing myself using all of them. Under cab will have one on each side just so you have clean wires. So that's 4 5, and then everything in the back box will be uh, two. For your speakers, I tie them together, and then I tie the back box itself together, which gets you up to 7. And
Okay.
then you have basically one input available, which could be whatever you want to be. If you're doing your if you're doing your left strips, your left what's it called? Your left and right playfield strips, you can actually do, your leg LEDs if you end up doing that as well to tie all those in. Or
Okay.
the your flipper MX ones for the flipper magma save, you can kind of tie those in to the same series, flipper, then magma, then left strip, flipper magma, then right strip, and tie those in a series if you need to.
Okay. I guess that's what was confusing me, so I appreciate you clearing that up.
Yep. Yeah, you can run it now. You can run everything into a single output, and just daisy chain the crap out of everything. As long as you're telling the config file, hey,
There's
LEDs
this
1
many
through
in this
100.
series.
Yeah, 1 through 100 is for this.
Right.
100 through 200 is for that. It will know, but
You
I
better
just
write
don't
it
do
all
that.
down.
Better write it down. You better inject power constantly.
Right.
And if you're injecting power, I mean, what's the harm in running a single cable for data?
Yeah, I get the logic.
So
Okay.
that's all I got on addressables for today.
Well, and for
Just wanted
anybody
to
interested, I'll top off the YouTube video by saying we are on Discord, the virtual pinball chat. It's linked in the YouTube channel. You can find us there as Smog or Porgy. We have a lot of resources there to help you out. We're also at some point going to cover, when I do my addressables, I have the old Oak Micro solution, which you can't buy anymore. But I'll be showing what I've learned here with Porgy tonight in another video later. So if you have that and you need, it's been sitting there for 2 years, we'll help you get that connected too. But it should be pretty much the same principle Porgy showed you tonight for both
it's
the
exactly
devices.
the same.
It is.
For Mike's boards, the PAL board is identical.
Right.
The only difference with Mike's board is he only has 6 outputs on his board, unless you use his you hook up another connector.
And you have to solder that on.
Yep, you have to solder those on, so you'll
Yep.
have to add those on yourself. But it's very doable, and 6 might be enough for most people anyway.
Yeah, so I'll be a good example of that because now it sounds like I'm not going to use RGB undercab because you guys have all sold me to do that, and I will, need another connection, home run for that. So that's okay. Yep, makes sense. Well, that's it for this segment.